And we are live. How is everyone doing out there tonight? Happy Memorial Day. We have some big news. I got a crew with me to help analyze this new interview that came out with Dr. Stephen Greer on Third Phase of the Moon. And this was from a week ago. Stephen Greer gave some of his thoughts, and man, this is actually refreshing, to hear what Stephen had to say. He's come a long way. He's come around to a lot of things, and I gotten permission to play about 20 minutes of this, and go through some key highlight points, and I encourage everyone to go here and go and check out that video to watch the whole thing if you're interested. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and hit play on this.
I haven't gotten that information yet. Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Stephen Greer. I wanted to give all of you an update on what's actually going on behind the scenes here in Washington right now after the congressional hearings on Tuesday. And there are quite a few things to unpack here. And I'm here having a conversation with Blake Cousins.
Absolutely. Thanks for, this is pretty intense what's going on in Congress. We're just going to go straight to some of the statements that were made.
What people need to understand is that because of the people I'm working with here in DC, I can't talk in any specificity, but this is the first of many hearings. It's not the hearing. It's an introductory hearing. The other thing to remember is that following the public hearing that you have access to, and I have here a transcript of the whole thing, there was a classified hearing. So you need to understand that in the public hearings, usually it's all pretty much bureaucratic speak and administrative nonsense. But I think let's take 5 steps back and look at what really happened on Tuesday. What really happened on Tuesday is the equivalent of a story I'm going to tell you that I think is very insightful and shows how counterintelligence works. Some years ago in the 1990s, I was working with a gentleman at the NASA Ames Research Center, Dr. Richard Haynes, and I gave him a number of cases, and he eventually wrote a book called CE5. But he was a research scientist there, and at that time shared part of a building with the SETI project, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, of Carl Sagan and other fame. And the top people were in the building with him. And he went up to them, and Dr. Haynes said, also to Frank Drake, of the Drake formula, who estimated how many intelligent civilizations there are in our galaxy. The Drake formula is a calculation of that. And Dr. Haynes says, what would you do if I told you that the SETI project is actually an operation, counterintelligence operation, to make people think that we're looking for something when we've already had them land on the Earth, and that you're using radio telescopes to look for objects and civilizations that aren't using that antiquated 1800s technology. And this senior scientist turned to Dr. Haynes and said, well, Dick, I'd say that you're a very smart man. So what this hearing was, and if you look at it in its totality, rather than getting lost in the weeds, you come across with this opening concept that the Pentagon has only collected 400 cases to investigate. Well, of course, there were several thousand cases in the Project Grudge and Project Blue Book in the 50s and 60s. The idea that the people sitting there have zero historical knowledge of a UFO phenomenon that's been going on for over 100 years, since the late 1800s, is not conceivably possible. So you have to begin to ask the bigger question is, are they completely ignorant of the facts? Which, given that these are, government bureaucrats, it's possible. Or are they doing basically what they did with the SETI project and say, here we're starting from fresh. We really don't know anything about this. And deliberately making it appear to Congress and the American people and the media that there's no pre-existing body of evidence that has been run to ground thoroughly over the last 70 years.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're trying to portray. And you know, it's interesting what his comments about SETI being a counterintelligence or front organization. The stuff that SETI puts out is pretty lame and mild, in my opinion, and not up to par with the disclosure and everything else that's going on. This is super interesting because he's saying that this is all
Now, you don't
contrived. He's got a lot of interesting things to say about it, and I wanted to harp up on
have to go far to look at that. Anyone who can read, there's a 500 and some page book called Disclosure.
Yeah, he mentioned some good things. It's like, how could they be that ignorant? I mean, this is like the CIA was created a week after Roswell. The National Security Act was signed right after Roswell. The next key thing, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit.
But I think more importantly is you cannot criminalize an investigation or the disclosure of evidence, material, whistleblower testimony, government documents, no matter how many stamps they have on them, top secret, if the entity that is keeping it secret is itself a criminal organization. And remember, this was the assessment we reached in the mid-1990s. It's why we wrote that unless otherwise directed letter, which is what you write to agencies when you say to the military, unless I'm told otherwise, unless directed otherwise. Our assessment is that these projects are illegal, unconstitutional, and rogue. Therefore, anybody can come forward with documents from any base, material, top secret witness testimony, and no prosecution, persecution, criminality is attached to that act, because the organization that is holding all of that is lying to the president, lying to Congress, lying to the oversight people in the Pentagon who have a need to know. And I can prove this in a court of law. Every word I just said, I can prove in a court of law. Therefore, you cannot criminalize people who disclose illegal operations. Because by definition, if the operation is illegal, it is a priori not protected by the law. It's like if someone was running a Mafia storefront and someone broke a window, they say, oh, you know, I'm going to have you arrested because you broke into my illegal operation. Well, they can't do that. You can't do that. You know, contract law.
Yeah, but this is the Mafia we're talking about, Stephen. You break into their storefront, they're not calling the cops, bro. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there is no oversight for the overseers.
Yeah, there's no oversight for any of this, man. This is like just pointing out exactly what it is, and I'm glad he calls this is a criminal organization, and it's essentially a mafia. This is exactly what Stephen Greer. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry. This is kind of based and boring, right? And going through listening to Steve, but he's breaking it down for the people that are based and don't really get this stuff. So let's just keep that in mind.
Not so boring when we think about the implications, though. I mean, to tell a bit of a side story here, when I was doing my professional DJ career thing, I played at the biggest club that we have here in Milwaukee, which is the Eagles Club, during their New Year's Eve ballroom event. It was well known that the people who run that place, well, they would confiscate drugs from people coming in, and then they would get their own people out there to resell them. So that's something that we heard from people that were working there and actually watched this stuff happen. Now, I personally did not see this, and so I'm just going to say with the grain of salt, you could say it's speculation, but to take resources that are illegal and then to resell them is not so unlike what we've heard, from our own government apparently doing multiple times, and I wouldn't doubt that this extends to technologies.
So my question is, right, if there obviously there's a mafia, right? And, if we get the right whistleblowers to blow the right whistles, the right volume in the right places, that maybe we can expose this mafia, right? And and bring, you know, this whole criminal cabal to justice. That's kind of, I think, what he's getting at with this is that basically people who work for these organizations, these quasi-governmental organizations, which hide these secrets and keep these secrets so that, you know, our Pentagon officials can sit there in Congress and, you know, not be lying. They're not lying when they say we don't have materials. We have nothing of that sort, because they don't. They don't never had access to that. So they're telling the absolute truth. But all these things are locked up inside of these organizations, which are outside of government overreach and outside of governmental, you know, structure. And the UFO metals and the materials are of the utmost importance, the utmost scientific intelligence, and it's the number one thing that we have to fight for in all of this disclosure battle is getting access to those technologies and unlocking that stuff.
Right. And during the open session, they were stumbling over their words to find the right way and still tell the truth, saying we may not have access to those materials, but they couldn't quite find a way to say that they also didn't know about those materials, because it seems they were quite aware, hence the uncertainty, the jittery, and the way that they try to rephrase these things. Oh, we just can't get our hands on them. Well, that doesn't mean they don't know about those things, and they should still be public. At least acknowledgement of knowing that we have them would be a heck of a lot more. I'm not saying you give them out to public, you know, or civilian agencies for analysis. I can see that there's a national security risk here where certain really advanced materials we might want to keep under wraps. But that doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge we've gotten our hands on some of this stuff that's come out of our skies. Whether or not it was from non-terrestrial origin or whether or not it was from a potential threat to any particular country, that's something to debate. But to say that there's nothing at all is just flat out not true.
Yeah, it's not true, but it's true if you don't have, if all those things get squirreled away inside of one of these other organizations, which I think is exactly what's happening. It's exactly what they talked about happening 50 years ago when the last cover-up on UFOs happened in Congress with Project Blue Book. That in Hynek's notes, and Hynek was one of the lead research scientists who researched Project Blue Book, this J. Allen Hynek. In his notes, they found that one Pinnacle memorandum, which basically said that, you know, there was a second Project Blue Book that had access to all the metals, and it was run by Howard C. Cross of Battelle. And so we know that, you know, Battelle's at least linked to some of this. It's a suspect for one of these quasi-governmental organizations, which could have had access in the past to this type of stuff, and whether it's been moved somewhere else from there in the meantime or not is up for debate. But it was mentioned in James Fox's documentary on Unacknowledged, or what was the one he made? James Fox documentary. It was mentioned briefly in that. It was The Phenomena.
Yeah, I agree with what Jason said. Yeah, there is no real external threat. We are the threat. Hence, we are the targets.
Well, that's one of the things. Yeah, we are the targets. One of the things that Greer points out is that a lot of these things that we come to find out through research that are most popular themes in ufology, like cattle mutilations, abductions, including that document that just came out by Kit Green, who was connected to U.S. Army psychological warfare and counterintelligence operations, that detailed all the, you know, the burns and pregnancies that incurred from abductions and stuff like that, you know. So they're taking all of our worst fears, you know, like of a foreign invader that comes here, burns us, you know, attacks us, murders us, and rapes our women, and impregnates them, and they're putting all those together in sort of this document that they put out as you know, without there's no like fact check any of that stuff. It's just a government document from a psychological warfare program, and who knows if it's what
right. But it serves as good scare tactics.
Right. In the meantime, to convince people that, you know, and it's a perfect cover because, you know, the government they've been kidnapping people. They've been doing all this horrible stuff under these guises, and they use they use aliens as the cover up for it. They can just blame it on aliens. It's pretty disgusting. So, you know,
with no traceability back to what's really going on.
Yeah. this is
The amount
this is
of horrible
crazy. So
atrocities against mankind that have been done by the people that we put into office and by those who fall both underneath and above them. I mean, when our own president, the president of what was, well, at least used to be considered the most powerful country in the world, is told that this is beyond his pay grade and he doesn't have access to it. I find that a little bit ridiculous and quite disconcerting that there could be anything above that point.
yeah, it's interesting what Greer has to say about all of it, what he's learned about the structure and stuff, and he's come around a long way to realizing, why presidents aren't briefed on this stuff and how it's been hidden and where it's been hidden over the years, which we're going to get into that in tonight's show, and talk about these connections and some of the history, and yeah, let's keep playing this.
Said you were wrong about this. And because I know I can prove in a court of law I'm right. I've met with too many people over the last 30 years, cabinet level people.
Yeah, some of them are disinfo, so you got to be careful about that, Stephen. This is the key part, though. Is
appeared around 2019, sometimes called the Admiral Wilson memo or EW Notes memo.
I am not.
You're not.
I'm not personally aware of that.
Okay. This is a document in which, again, I'm not commenting on the veracity. I was hoping you would help me with that.
I'm not getting any sound. Is that you or
claims to
me?
have had a conversation with the Dr. Eric Wilson and claims to have sort of been made aware of certain contractors or DoD programs that he tried to get fuller access to and was denied access to. So you're not aware of that?
I'm not aware, Congressman.
I think this question was very important, and unfortunately, again, the people answering didn't have any knowledge of it. Now, remember, Admiral Wilson, this memo they're referring to is a debriefing of the admiral by this
Jeremy,
gentleman,
I'm not getting any
and it was
sound.
leaked out of Edgar Mitchell's archives after he passed away. But
Rob, check your audio settings. We can all hear it fine. Can you even hear me talking?
yeah, you can hear me, right? I just
Damn it.
That's strange because he was
Thanks.
fine perfectly. He was perfectly fine earlier before we started the live stream. So I wonder what happened on that end.
yeah, this is all right. I'm gonna keep playing it, so hopefully he can get his sound figured out.
it was about the meeting I had with Admiral Wilson, who was the head of intelligence, J2, for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And this was 25 years ago. This is 1997, April 1997.
This is key because
And of course,
Greer
in
knew
that,
him.
Admiral Wilson admits, this is not in the transcript, of course, the questions and answers, that he had found out about this clandestine, beyond black, above top secret group, but had been threatened with demotion and more for if he didn't back off of the inquiries. Now, remember that his inquiries about this
Oh, that's
happened
the
after
problem.
he
I have
provided
to
enough
go.
actionable
Bye.
intelligence to him through channels, courier, prior to the meeting. And at the meeting, of course, I brought astronaut Edgar Mitchell there so he could learn. He really didn't have any information on the subject way back then. But also I had my military advisor and a military witness, whistleblower, and my assistant, Sherry Adamek. So that was going to be a 45-minute stand-up briefing. It went on for, I think, nearly 3 hours. The Admiral kept canceling appointments because it was so much information being provided. But prior to the meeting, we had
Some of Greer's stories, man, it's like they sound so crazy, it's almost unbelievable. So and there's, again, where's the transcript or the recording of this or some kind of document of it? Man, sometimes you got to wonder about this stuff. So it's speculative, but he certainly builds a case here for with some of the secrecy that's surrounded this. He said that a number of the people that he's talked to who've tried to look into this were threatened. And lots of other things that had happened to them for trying to, look into this and trying to get to the truth about this. So that he's basically, you know, compiled case evidence for a criminal conspiracy to silence individuals and to, you know, to commit a cover up within the United States government of this information and technology. But again, yeah, it's full of a lot of uncorroborated facts, which makes it hard to distinguish this stuff, because some of it sounds legit, some of it is legit, you know, and some of it sounds completely, you know, nuts and stuff. So like,
I think we can all agree that a little evidence goes a long ways, especially in a genre like this, where it's so hard to actually get your hands on physical media or really whittle down what stuff happened. But man, you found a piece of gold today, didn't you?
I've been finding gold all week, man. I don't know. What exactly are you referring to?
I'm referring to the fact that you actually figured out where that funny Ning Li went into. I cannot believe that you got your hands on that report and found exactly where it was. So
yeah,
that's
someone
just
posted
wonderful.
about it on Twitter this morning about the Ning Li thing, and was asking, you know, he started looking into the case, and he's like, well, it says here on Wikipedia, on the Ning Li page, that she was. So let me just stop the screen. I'll share this so people can see it.
Well, don't forget to include that the Wikipedia article that was posted up there publicly is been removed or stripped, and you have to go back to the archive to get it.
Yeah, so this one on here, so link number 8 is this annual report for the, you know, and so I had to go on there and find it and then look it up for 2001 to get the DoD's 2001 annual report of all the sub-projects that it funded that are on this report list. And there was a couple of them, actually. I think there's one published every month or something. No, there isn't. Not this. That was something else. I had to get magazine articles that talk about these technologies as they come out and stuff. But I got the DoD contract. Let's see if I can't share it.
Yeah, let's take a look at the official documentation on that project that she was funded for. Out of all things, gravitational research.
Oh, no, it did 63.
Yeah, that's not right.
No, it was page 64 that it needed to be. Hold on. I got to find that now. There it is. So let me do Control P. Why did it not do that? So 63, 65. I'll just do that. PDF. Damn it. Why did it do that? It's like a page behind, because there's one page that's blank, so it sent me the page behind it. Is what it did. So I'm going to have to resend it to you, too. All right. Sorry about that. So we're trying to get all these documents together for all this stuff, because we want like official documents for everything and all these projects that ever happened. We're trying to really dig back through the case literature and get more information. Specifically, you know, like what Greer was talking about in this. Let me see. So he talks about, you know, people that were threatened and this evidence of a criminal conspiracy. But this.
And you lost your audio.
Yeah, no, I got to share the audio on it again. So, bam.
Not to take our foot off the gas for a nanosecond on pushing for disclosure. Because if we stop pushing for that, they're going to say, okay, we've placated and sort of satisfied these initial inquiries by these very busy people in the US government and the media, and now we can pivot back to the same old status quo of cover-up. And so I think this is where any attempt to hush up, censor, or marginalize people doing serious research on this is very dangerous, because I don't think in a democracy you can ever count on secret programs in a government that really becoming clean. That's only going to happen if the people keep the pressure up.
No, I think their goal was to
we are
almost
the
dumb
people.
it down by presenting the evidence.
We are the people, and that definitely is their goal, is to dumb it all down, showing the Jeremy Corbell stuff, putting Jeremy Corbell forward as the champion, and this ufologist with all the best evidence, who's got all the right contacts and all this stuff, and he's got this army of shills, propping him up as the one, so that he can go in there and fail, and they can be like, look, these guys are idiots, and
Who are
this is all
listening,
they have
who
for
are
evidence.
legitimate researchers who hold archives of significant information, evidence, like I said, government documents, whistleblower leads to whistleblowers, actionable intelligence on facilities, corporations, and very well analyzed and legitimate photos and videos. Because what we have to do, the answers, and then and I am then personally currying them and handing them off to those people. So anyone out there who has documents, legitimate photos, video, testimony, whistleblowers, actionable intelligence, they need to get that to us in the next 2 weeks, because
The next
this
2
train
weeks.
has really already left the station.
So this is important because, I have some contacts with Stephen and through the guys who did this interview, Blake and Brent Cousins, and who might be joining me towards the end of the stream, and they've asked me to come over to their stream, I think, following this to talk a little bit more about this. So I'll be doing that and trying to get the word out and trying to get more information to folks like Stephen Greer, because it is legal. It is 100% legal, and it's because the organization that's in charge of this cover-up is an illegal conspiracy, and we're doing justice by exposing it. So it's completely legal to ask people to come forward and also get information together. But this is interesting what he says at the end here about the archive.
Who are listening, who are legitimate researchers who hold archives of significant information, evidence, like I said, government documents, whistleblower leads to whistleblowers, actionable intelligence on facilities, corporations, and very well analyzed and legitimate photos and videos. Because what we have to do in this, what we're back channeling into the government, is the best evidence that we can get, so they don't keep showing rubbish like that Corbell video.
That's
okay,
right.
so you guys should help us with that. There are a lot of people who are listening that have content. And what we're doing right now, just so you have an idea, we're doing a global scrub of the whole planet, of everything that could be a legitimate source of information. That will then be analyzed and triaged.
That's interesting. I just want to point out, why does he use the word scrub?
Yeah, historically, what does scrub mean? To completely remove, to wipe away, to get rid of, to dispose of.
Why do you use the word scrub? Aren't you doing a collection and a mass dissemination? We should be like, the opposite of scrub. We should be dirtying up, or I don't know, like scrub means to remove. So let's listen to that again and the terminology used by Greer. And it was kind of interesting. Why? So he's asking for a global call of all the documents. So this is like, it makes me want to reach out to him and be like, look, I got a bunch of stuff, but it also makes me like, oh, am I going to get scrubbed?
Archives are legit. But what I'd say is we need people who are listening who are legitimate researchers who hold archives of significant information, evidence, like I said, government documents, whistleblower leads to whistleblowers, actionable intelligence on facilities, corporations, and very well analyzed and legitimate photos and videos. Because what we have to do in this, what we're back channeling into the government, is the best evidence that we can get, so they don't keep showing rubbish like that Corbell video.
That's
okay,
right.
so you guys should help us with that.
I can't
There are a
believe
lot
you
of
called
people
Corbell.
who are
That's so
listening
good.
that have content. And what we're doing right now, just so you have an idea, we're doing a global scrub A scrub of the whole planet, everything that could be a legit.
So why would
We're doing a global
well-funded black
scrub.
projects want to scrub away a global documented database of anything that could be legitimate?
Yeah.
They must be awfully afraid right about now. And why has it just started up? We've had enough of our own people attacked to say that there's a significant change in the course of just this last month, where they're now
Yes.
going after some of us. Not all of us, but particularly those who already have something that has worked, currently have something that works, or are trying to get stuff out there. The
Yeah.
technologists, the people who build things, people who could, I don't know, say offer some kind of relief if something really terrible happened on a large scale. Well, they're the threat now because you don't have to go through your own Fed to get relief from a catastrophe. You could actually go to individuals. And if your neighbor happens to have something that could save your entire block, well, they're a threat.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Greer was giving me some good vibes. He said some good things. You know, he called out Jeremy Corbell and made me laugh, dude. But man, why does he use the word scrub, dude? He's a doctor. He's got to know what that word means. Yeah, man, scrub is that's like a bad word, and I didn't like that he's talking about having everyone who has any kind of actionable intelligence or information to contact him, and then talking about scrubbing. Man, I'd like to ask him more about that, and you know, if he can, I'd like to see his database and what kind of information they have to.
Man, if we could get Greer on here, I have
because there's different
I have
types
a
of
pretty
information.
large number of
There's
questions.
Some of the best information that you can't share because you have to buy it and it's copywritten and it costs big money. And you get sued if you share it. Dude, there's so much to talk about, man. Thank you for the super chat, Switchcraft. And I have to do a stream every day now because since those hearings happened, it's just more and more commentary. All these people who are part of this are coming out of the woodwork, and it's great to hear and analyze all these different actors and players who've been on different parts of the main stage. What's interesting is, in this, I'm going to find the part about TTSA, but maybe we'll keep playing this and for a little bit. But
a scrub of the whole planet, everything that could be a legitimate source of information. That will then be analyzed and triaged, most important to least important. And if it seems spurious or not legitimate, we'll just take it out. Yeah, so, again, if people can be in touch with us,
we'll just take it out.
SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS disclosure.com. If you have this kind of evidence, archive material, it will be handed off hand to hand from me to these folks who are trying to get to the bottom of it. Now's the time. There is a door open. How long that door will be open, I don't know. But I suggest we move through it expeditiously, quickly.
Absolutely. We just received a video that we put up, and it has multiple angles over Hawaii of a massive triangular craft, and people are shocked. And we're going to send that over to you, and among other evidence from the public that I think the people on your end might be interested in.
You know what?
Geez, if I analyze Greer's body language here in this part of the clip, he looks awfully nervous compared to how he normally is composed. I mean, he looks really nervous after saying that. I wonder why.
Yeah, man. I don't know. There's some things about this. He even like calls TTSA a psyop at one point in this, and I want to find that. Let me see that. It was right here.
Well, you know what's far more threatening than personal testimony and little video clips of footage that people took on their cell phones? It's folks who understand how to build this technology and might be willing to talk about it publicly.
The kind of false flag operation known as TTSA and people like Elizondo, almost all the cases they were presenting were man-made U.S. above top secret aircraft doing incursions into airspace and facilities for their psychological warfare value.
Yes.
And their hours.
That's what we were saying from the start. We were like, a lot of these things are either man-made, all this evidence that they presented was just, yeah, I know he views TTSA as competition as well, so maybe that's why he's attacking them. But, he's not the only person that's, pointed out the strangeness of the whole, this rock star wants to get into UFOs, approaches Podesta, and Podesta gets a bunch of these, CIA guys together to, take control of the UFO narrative. It's not that hard to see that they've gotten tons of attention and they've said very little, but I mean, still, like, maybe that's their card, is they're going to hype it all up and get Elizondo to testify, and he's going to bomb at the hearings, and that's going to, because we have we have to play all the cards right at these hearings in order to get to expose all this. And, the Wilson docs were interesting, and Greer brings up a lot of good points because for 10 minutes. And in fact, I learned some new things about the Wilson documents, that they actually came from Edgar Mitchell's notes, and that, Greer and Grant Cameron and some of these other guys were like the ones that actually, brought this out. So it's sort of interesting that, that might have been what the crash retrieval programs have morphed into, but you got to go back to the original of where all this stuff began as well, because the last Project Blue Book, as we talked about before, there was a second Project Blue Book, and that was run by the top metallurgists of the time. And this whole Pinnacle Memorandum, there's cases, documented cases of the military getting a hold of flying saucer metals and debris. This case documents of this, numerous case files on this. And where do those materials go? We know that the OSAP program, has these Defense Intelligence Reference documents talking about a lot of these technologies and stuff, which have been alleged to have, come from, alien technology. And, people that, were heads of the former Material Command at Wright-Patterson at the time, namely Philip Corso, saying this on record and writing books about it on their deathbed and stuff. So there's been a number of people who have talked about this, and I doubt that Corso really had the scientific knowledge to really fully understand the scope or what was really going on with this, because, again, a lot of that was secretly done through these quasi-governmental organizations like Battelle, and individuals like Howard Cross, who was the director of Battelle, and some of their top metallurgists of the time, like Elroy Center, who wrote a report including a phase diagram for titanium nickel alloys that they were analyzing back in 1949, which was just 2 years after Roswell, and was 10 years, I think, before they actually, no, it was 56. When did they discover nitinol wire? A couple years after that at Naval Ordnance Research Labs, but it was all based on this guy's work at Battelle, on some unknown, and in the work it would this document's called the Second Progress Report. Right, Patterson, Battelle. Yeah. There's a lot of reporting on this that led me down some false rabbit holes. We did eventually get a hold of this first progress report, and it was not nearly as interesting as the second progress report, which detailed this chlorine, the way to dissolve it in liquid chlorine, so they could analyze the off gases to tell what the sample was made of, and then that's what led them to, trying all these these charts for some of the trace elements that they found inside this material, apparently. And very interesting that these metallic glasses exhibit properties of phonon resonances, where they're able to create entangled phonon pairs very easily because they essentially vibrate forever. But I won't get into too much of the science on that stuff. I could show off those videos on liquid metal and stuff like that, where they ring the tuning fork made of iron versus the one made of metallic glass, and they show. But I wanted to talk tonight specifically about this whole, and it revolves around the Department of Energy, the U.S. Department of Energy, and it revolves around the Manhattan Project itself, because that was where a lot of the secrecy and programs were developed and began. And, you know, as we know, Battelle made the demon core for the, you know, first atomic weapon. They made this plutonium cores. They're the ones who developed the refining and, you know, metallurgical processes to develop those radioactive cores that are used in the thermonuclear reactions, fission reactions of atomic weapons. And a lot of the scientists who work for Battelle, like John Archibald Wheeler, were well immersed in this top secret world of H-bombs and other types of technologies for defense purposes. And again, Wheeler wrote about it from bit. He wrote about this quantum information idea that we're all just quantum information at the bottom level, and if we can hack the information code of the matrix, then we can, you know, rule the galaxy. But it all started back on this Department of Energy, what was the Atomic Energy Commission. So let's get this straight. So there was this Energy Research and Development Administration, which was formed in 1974, and it was dissolved 3 years later in 77. And mind you, this is an important year in the deep state history, because 74, 77 is when George Bush took control of the CIA, allegedly to clean it up for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which was investigating Kennedy's death and wanted someone who was completely uninvolved to, you know, come in and clean up the CIA. And that's when he moved all the secret operations within the CIA into private quasi-governmental organizations, which were outside the jurisdictions of FOIA and governmental oversight, so that in the future they could better hide their activities from investigations like this. And it's an important year in understanding the development of all this. But what was formerly its predecessing agency, the United States Atomic Energy Commission, which was formed in 1946. This is, mind you, after the Manhattan Project made its first successful detonation in 1945 with the Trinity test. So this is, and then it was dissolved in 75 when it became that other agency briefly, and then. Oh yeah, it also there was another agency called the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and then they reformed everything under the Department of Energy, and it's now all the Department of Energy. But it has an interesting history. There's lots. It goes back to the Manhattan Project, and a lot of the guys who are involved will give you some, you know, basis of, you know, background intelligence on how this was all set up. But the key ones are you know, Howard Cross, I believe, and this whole Pinnacle Memorandum of because the metals and the UFO metals are the key thing, because we had this first successful detonation of atomic weapon that started the nuclear age. We started, you know, developing this, you know, immediately to get nuclear energy, because heck, we have a way to make energy out of this stuff. So let's figure that out so we can solve some of our energy problems right away. And that happened. Absolutely, that happened. And there was a lot of reorganization that occurred around this time that was actually because of the oil crisis and you know, what actually led to the development of the petrodollar and all the other interesting things that play roles in so many other world events, it seems. So there's a lot that surrounds this this little organization that sprouted out of the Manhattan Project. And it's interesting that during the 50s, when Project Blue Book was taking place, you know, it was they had established these other projects in 1947 to keep like a watch out, but Blue Book ran from 1952 to 1969, and they basically it was a giant cover up, and say, you know, of all the UFO events, and some of this stuff predates. You know, we've explained a lot of this with tech in terms of technology, but some of these cases predate, you know, a lot of this technologies and stuff. They go back to at least like the late 1800s and stuff like that. So it's certainly interesting debating how much of this is our own secret projects, because we figured out a lot of that information, and that's can explain a majority of the UFO cases is with just, you know, top secret aerospace intelligence of just domestic projects. But if there's metals that exist, then they'd be inside one of these quasi-governmental organizations. And these guys have an annual budget of $6.2 billion. It's all tax-free because they're a non-profit organization under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, because it's an organization for charitable, scientific, and educational purposes. So if it's charitable and educational, then you know, we should be able to. I want to go there and get more information on this history, on Howard Cross, on the vault, and Elroy Center, the metallurgist who worked under Battelle, that allegedly, you know, said that he worked on these alien materials. He told his wife that he worked on these alien materials, and he wrote those progress reports for Wright-Patterson back in the day, which are interesting. Yeah, I got a bunch of interesting documents that came across the desk recently. This Federal Energy Administration, developed in '74 to address the 1970s energy crisis, specifically 1973 oil crisis, which led to the formation of OPEC and all that other great stuff if you study oil history. But in any case, it's all about the energy. They want you completely dependent on oil and on them. And if you're like this water car inventor, whose death we're still investigating, Tim Pool actually tipped me off to this, and that was Aaron Salter Jr. This guy was a Buffalo cop, Buffalo Police Department, and he had a whole YouTube channel, which they've taken down, where he did experiments with hydrogen vehicles and alternative energy to run his car on water, and doing Stanley Meyer research into water car technology, which I thought was super crazy. And I think we all need to we should reach out to them and request that they, you know, as crazy as it sounds, and maybe it's just totally wacky and totally coincidence that they shot this man in a mass shooting, where there's been so many of these in the recent gun grab, and there's been a lot of accusations from a lot of people that, you know, some of these events are staged or at least set up by the FBI. Came out that one of these FBI agents was talking to one of these shooters in a chat room, and, you know, so it's like they try to target these types of people and groom them and frequent where they're hanging out, and who knows if they say things that are suggestive or program them in some way to carry out these events and then use those events. So I don't know. There's a lot of people that have some, you know, suspicion about these angry young men that are just, their brains, when you're that young, your brain's not like developed yet. You're so susceptible to dumbass, you know, crap from the world around you, and it's just so easy to falsely manipulate someone who's angry to do something. And if you just position them in the right place at the right time to do it, then you can sometimes get the results that you want. So I don't know, maybe this was set up, but it could be, because they could pick targets like this. This guy was, obviously, a threat to a government that wants you completely dependent on their technologies and their $6, $7 a gallon gasoline. It's going to 8 soon. I predicted this years ago, and systems like this will be, although very rudimentary in design, this stuff's going to be outlawed, and they're going to be taking people out who work on stuff like this. And we know people in our group that are working on stuff like this who've been targeted of, strange events during the past month. And if anyone else has a something strange to report and is working on these types of technologies, this is not going to fly. You're not alone. And reach out to us. Jump on the StreamYard now and share your story, and we'll get you locked into this community, because that's what we're here for. We're here for you. We're here for this community. And we're not here to collect information to scrub it in any kind of way. Quite the opposite. And, I'm going to try to get in touch with Greer in case, and provide him with some stuff that, what I think it might be great to debrief some of these senators and congressmen on that he's going to put into this package, stuff that I think should be included in there. But I'm certainly, not going to allow this information to be scrubbed. And this is an interesting case. We're still investigating, the full details. But I could think of some scenarios where, they could have programmed the shooter and then set this guy up to be there at the same time with, one of his ex-employees in a phone call or something. So I think that, we should get his phone. We should subpoena FOIA. Anyone that wants to FOIA the information, they can get a hold of the Buffalo Police Department and, file a FOIA for the, Aaron Salter's phone records. I want to find the last people that called him, the last people that texted him, what those text messages were, anything like that. And yeah, if we can get a hold of that information and perform our own, private investigation into this death, just to ensure that this was not, in fact, a setup by some other, entity or agency, that would be good to know. And it's good to let this community know that there are checks and balances and people that are watching this type of stuff and investigating things like this. So, yeah. Oh, great. Mike Turber, dude, you're the man for this. I know you're going to get some stuff out of them. Dude, if you want to jump on, there's the StreamYard link, man. Alien, hey, Amy, what's up? Welcome to the chat. Yes, interesting stuff. But we're here for you in this community. Anyone who's working on the energy stuff, I've shied away from it because there was so much crap, and I know I'm so strong to the second law of thermodynamics, but reading a lot of the literature from Remy Cornwall, who was on APEC, has really, kind of changed my mind on a lot of this stuff. And I realized that, if we have unlimited energy, then the propulsion problem is of the least significance of all, So the big problem is, the energy production and the energy, creation and ways to do that. Potentially ways to do that through, fusion energy, laser transmutation, and other interesting, cold fusion or low temperature lattice assisted, or I don't know what you'd call it, photonically assisted nuclear reactions. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, free energy is a bad term. I think that, we need to hold true to, laws of physics and stuff. It's not really, there's no such thing as a closed system in nature, and there's all kinds of energy around us that we just have to learn to tap into a little bit better, potentially, especially on the small scale in terms of things like these UFO metals, where they seem to drop these cores when they're done with them, and this is like a spent fuel rod. So there's some type of nuclear process going on inside these UFOs to burn up these fuel rods for their ships, and they appear in numerous cases of UFOs dropping these types of metals. So I think it's quite interesting, especially some of these fractures and cavitations that occur on the structure of this object are very similar to what we see in Bob Greenier's experience and lots of other cold fusion researchers' experiments with the palladium cathodes that tend to do this as they get spent up. Yeah, so in any case, the DIRDs from this OSAP program are this key element, and lots of great science involved in those. But I think the scientific cover-up and the metals and these crash retrievals are the most important. I think that's what we really need to hammer on at these hearings and go after that. And there needs to be lots of questions. We need to remind us. We need to find a way to reach out to our senators. I don't know. It's almost like I want to hold my own big phone home, because I feel like the Identified Celebrity Review could have done a better job. That those guys, they had the right idea, but I don't think they have enough of the knowledge to really nail that. Because it's not now it's down to the razor. Now we've got the attention. Now we've got the megaphone, and now it's all about, all right, well, we need the smart kids to set up and figure out exactly what we're going to say and how we're going to say it, so that these smart asses at the Pentagon can't fucking work their way around it, and we can nail these suckers down, like Jeremy Corbell could only dream of in his wildest dreams. Daniel Foster.
Hello.
So Daniel is an
How are you, y'all?
inventor. In case you don't know,
I
Daniel,
can't hear anybody. Hold on. I'm
Daniel.
not hearing.
Oh my God! Now he's gonna get his audio messed up. So Dan has actually had some assassination attempts against him recently, and he's gonna talk a little bit about that. This is pretty crazy stuff.
Am I still here? I hear somebody, maybe.
Check 1, 2, Dan. Check
All
1,
right,
2.
all right. I got you.
You're a lot more clear
Wow.
now, by the way.
Yeah, it's way better. Thanks, fellas. Thanks for being.
Thanks for coming in. We'd love to hear the story about what happened recently.
I'm. I don't know if it's my eyes being open or if I'm drawing out this stupid drama that doesn't need to be there. I don't know, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of stupid drama out here, man.
But after the dude tried to run me over, the next day he's parked in the middle, like after dark, right across my street. Wait, is there an echo? Do we need to?
We can hear you fine, Daniel. And yes,
I
this
heard
guy
an
tried
echo.
to run you. He tried to run you over in an intersection.
Yeah, it was. Everybody was trying to go home, so it was full. You couldn't fill up the streets enough. It was full on traffic, and the guy turned around, swerved. He saw me I was just laughing because, oh God, I don't even remember why I was laughing. I laugh
want
a
to hear
lot.
more about this invention and why you think they might be after you.
Jeremiah could probably say it better, but the entire idea of it's two counter-wound on the out, well, just on the outside. It's two counter-wound monatomic, I mean monopolar magnetic coils. I'm a little. I haven't spoke with people in 20 years, dudes. If you can give me a break, you know, if you can just like let me correct myself. I don't want to mean, you know, to make anyone misbelieve me or anything. I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best right now. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, sorry if I'm being a little bit like this is like a police interview, but I'm just trying to like ask.
It might be my ecstaticness that people are actually listening to me after 20 years. I felt so alone, and no one, and everyone I brought it to just said like, "You're full of shit." And but this man, I guess it was like 2 days ago. He tried to run me and my dog over, and it was in downtown traffic, like the most dense traffic where everyone's trying to go home. And he pointed at me when I was at the crosswalk with my dog. And me and my dog backed off. And then he made his turn, and he tried to swerve around and hit us at the Sperling Furniture Factory on Palmdale Boulevard and Q3. Look it up. And then we ran because the light was still crosswalk green. Me and my dog, I was like, "Come on, little pup. Come on, bump." Well, I'm not going to tell everyone how to control my dog. Only I know how to control my dog. And I'm not going to tell everybody how I control my dog and the words I use. But I said, you know, come on with me. And he did. He followed me relentlessly. And then when we got to Starbucks, the dude had already turned around and he had crossed the way, and he tried to run us over at the Starbucks again. And I'm like, what?
Sure he wasn't after the dog? I'm just kidding.
Maybe he hates dogs. I don't know. He might be just a dog hater. A tiny little, half, well, mostly Chihuahua, little, like a little bit like a wiener Wawa doggy.
So what are you
He might have
building there,
wanted to kill
Jeremiah? What are you building there? You got two hemispherical coils with this.
Yeah, so what I'm showing here is Dan's design, or at least my best iteration of attempting to replicate Dan's design. And
yeah, we talked earlier.
This system is composed of quite a few coils. It depends whether you want to count a dual speaker wire where two conductors are attached side by side as one coil, or whether you want to designate those as two coils. I think it's actually important that we do call them two different coils, even when you have two parallel wires, like we see coming out the top here. You know, you've got a red and a black next to each other. They come out of manufacturing attached to each other. So when they're layered in this particular fashion, where you have one above the other, and they go multiple layers deep, as you can see, kind of, well, I'll use the other half.
The phasing is
right
prominent.
So you see here on the top, you see a red and a black and a red and a black.
Yes.
And so on the inside, we don't have the bare conductors as this proper design would have. But what we have here are effectively from the top down 4 layers of wire. And the fact that they are not in the same exact space, but they basically have fields that are crossing. So I don't know if many people here have heard of the caduceus coil, but it's a pretty straightforward coil that, well, I've got one sitting right here, ironically. Yeah, here's a caduceus coil. So a caduceus coil has windings that are wrapped across. They wrap and cross at 90 degrees. And so basically any current that's flowing up in this direction around this coil will eventually come back around the other side and flow down in this direction. And so these two fields at this cross point, they'll try to cancel each other out, and we end up with magnetic energy density that has 0 vector potential in this specific region. And if you line a number of these things up along a linear array, you get a transmission that happens because we're compressing space-time in these regions where we're canceling out the vector potentials, but we're keeping the total amount of energy that's stored in a magnetic field that is not accessible from the outside of this little region here. It's extremely compressed very tightly in exactly that space between those conductors. And so what Dan effectively has done is created a system that you have two individual flat pancake coils here in the very center, the equator of this device, and they're not following each other around in their exact same loop. The top coil and the bottom coil cross at just a slight angle. Now, this is more of an extreme example. They cross at just a slight angle, but all the way down each turn, they cross and cross and cross and cross. So if you have, say, a charge sitting right here in the atmosphere, you have a dipole molecule. The negative side of that dipole is going to try to be pulled towards the center, as these coils on the bottom try to torque it around clockwise. But the coils on the top are going to try to torque that same exact particle in the opposite direction. So you'll end up with a negative dipole facing inwards and the positive side facing outwards. If the energy density is strong enough, if the volts per meter, or the changing magnetic field produced by these coils, which effectively cancel their own fields and change the metric tensor, these are metric tensor engineering coils, if you will, they'll change the binding energy so that the already polarized dipole molecule in the atmosphere can now split apart and create an ion. And if that ion has a high enough acceleration, it can slam into other particles and physically break them apart, literally stripping all of the electrons right out of the valence shell.
Is that the basis for the EM drive?
What's that?
Is that part of the basis of an EM drive, or somehow part of that?
You could consider it very similar or related to an MHD drive. An MHD drive usually requires an external source of injected plasma. And I think what Dan has figured out here is how to generate that plasma required inside the device itself by using a very large amount of current passing through a cross-sectional area, where in his original design, as simple as it may sound, he had used something akin to a light dimmer to pulse. Now, I looked at the waveforms on a light dimmer, and you basically get a spike in each direction, so across the zero line. When that signal disconnects, you get a very, very fast rise time. It's got a Thyristor inside of it, which they're not the fastest devices in the world, but with the inductance of these systems, you have a lot of current flowing around them. And so that impulse creates a very large amount of stress on any given dipoles. And if we can create a large quantity of ionization locally without the need of high voltages input, if we can do it at literally 1 or 2 volts, which in this case, that's precisely what it's designed to do, we can create quite a bit of lifting force, especially if we have ions that are coming and being generated at a center point and then trying to fly out from each other. They're going to create buoyancy. They're going to try to pull that whole thing upwards because you're effectively having particles that are of like charge trying to get out of the same space. But there's also neutral air in the way, so they're going to slam into those neutral air molecules and try to pull them out of the way, creating almost what is akin to the Coanda effect. Only in this case, we don't need moving parts. On the underside, if we can compress them in, they're going to create a pressure. And so if especially those charged particles happen to be negative, or we create negative ions on the bottom side, the Earth that we live on is negatively charged. So we're going to get a repulsion from the ground on the negative side where we're compressing the charge directly underneath the device or the craft in a full-scale device. And what we end up with is a lack of pressure on top and an addition of pressure on the bottom. But we also end up with a lack of electromagnetic energy density on top, where the concentration of charged particles is being torn apart or diluted on the top, which means it drags along space-time with it. It's the kinematic field, if you will. And on the bottom side, you're compressing those same exact fields, creating a higher energy density. And so once again, metric engineering, you cram too much energy into a small volume of space, and you're going to change the permeativity and permeability of that space. As a result, you're going to change the amount of acceleration that a given particle feels in that space.
So this is cool. So Thyristor, there's a bunch of different types of thyristors, and listed on the list is, you know, you ever taken the you ever get one of those lighters where it's just a push to start, and you taken the piece out of it that's the igniter piece, and it's like this it's like a crystal or something, almost like
it is. It's quartz, a piezoelectric crystal, generating approximately 20,000 volts impulse when struck with a tiny hammer about the size of a BB.
Yeah, so that's.
We can barely hear you, Jeremy.
That's super interesting. How about now? Is that better?
Way better.
Sweet. All right. Yeah. So, thyristors. What kind of thyristor did you use for that core device that you were showing off?
The thyristors I have previously tried to drive this system were really not set up in a circuit that could handle the impulses. They ran for too long of a period of time at the AC rectified line voltage, 170 volts DC, which is what that system automatically does, as they're semiconductors, so they're only going to let current flow through in one direction while they're conducting. Um, Anyways, yeah, they weren't up to the challenge, so I'm redesigning the driver circuit completely so that I can generate the fastest possible impulses, which means I need high voltage semiconductors. In this case, I'm going to choose 1200 volt MOSFETs with a switching transition time in total of about 60 to 70 nanoseconds. And that should be significantly faster than the off-the-shelf light dimmers that Dan originally used in his design 20 years ago.
Oh, hey, we have a special guest here.
Excellent.
Blake and Brent Cousins, who did that awesome interview with Stephen Greer. We showed a couple clips from earlier. Welcome to the show, guys.
What's up, guys? How you guys doing? Good to be here.
Good, man. We're just getting heavy on some science stuff as we like to do on this channel. There's so much SAPs. I mean, I want to play a clip in a second here. I think it's this one. No, let me find this. Here it is. This is a compilation clip that someone sent me on the 21 trillion, and it's pretty good. So there's a unaccounted for or missing $21 trillion from the American budget right now.
This is pre 9/11, or
according to count. Yeah, well, no, 9/11. The day before 9/11, it was 2.3 trillion that
right.
Rumsfeld announced. Someone asked him about it. And that clip's in here, and he, says, "Oh, we found the money. It was just unaccounted for."
Right.
But realistically, that money's still like, we don't know. It's been accounted for, but it's like, yeah, $2,000 toilet seat, $60,000 hammer type of thing, and it's really, the money's been washed, and we just talk about a lot of these programs. We've got so much information that they didn't talk about at all. It probably wasn't even. I doubt a lot of the stuff was even brought up at the classified hearing. The kind of stuff that we put together in our technical briefing on UAP, and we have all the documents, and we get more all the time as we get FOIAs back on this stuff. But we're getting all these documents together. When I heard Greer make that call for documents and say that there's 2 weeks notice on this, man, we already have a lot of this thrown together. That we've already done our own little private community document collection and databasing and archiving. And we'd love to make that. Definitely not get it scrubbed. We're not trying to get scrubbed. I don't know what's.
Well, let me clarify what I was mentioning in the chat earlier that I know was getting confusing. One thing about the whistleblower protection, the Whistleblower Act came out in 1989, I think. Pretty sure it's 89 or right around that time frame. When it came out, a lot of memos went out to all government employees, basically stating that if you have an issue in your current work field, where it's a safety issue or non-compliance issue or whatever the issue is, you can bring it up to your immediate supervisor, and or if they are part of the problem, which obviously is part of the problem, you can bypass that and go through a different method. But I want to be very clear what Greer is saying, just so everyone understands. By Greer asking for whistleblowers to come to him, you're not going to get the whistleblower protection that you would get by going through the official means, which I know it sounds stupid. It's kind of like going to the internal affairs of a police agency to have them investigate themselves. So it does sound kind of silly, but
yeah,
get that protection.
It's the catch-22.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I was saying about what Greer was saying is not legal, and anyone sending him information is not protected So if he gives any illusion that that's happening, that's not happening. Now he can do it under the media
Right.
guide, which basically is protecting sources, but that's about it.
And a lot of the information that we've gathered was all open source, or like,
Yeah.
or we had people, we've been into this for so long, we knew about it before it went dark, or we just, you know, we found the records
You
of it.
archived a lot of that, I guess.
A lot of it's been archived, you know, and
Good.
they've scrubbed a lot of this from the internet. It all gets scrubbed. It all disappears, you know, if we're talking about that. But
Yeah, I'm thinking when he mentioned the word scrubbed, he meant you might be considering that he wants to scrub it and get rid of all the evidence that's, you know, some smoking gun in there, and he wants to scrub it. Actually, I think what he's meaning, and he pretty much said it
Clean it.
very clearly, is that he wants to scrub over all the evidence and go through what's good and what's not. And if it's not good, throw that away so we're not wasting our time with that and go after the good stuff. So he's scrubbing over all the information and dissecting what he wants to present in Washington and triage it. So I'm not thinking it's nefarious in the word scrubbing that you're thinking. It's just more of, again, scrubbing through all the information.
Yeah, there's an old version of the term scrub, which basically means to go through all the information, and it's almost like a redaction, to get rid of the erroneous stuff that's not important to it and just stick with the parts and the details that actually push whatever the narrative is that they're trying to push forward. So that may be it, part of it.
And then again, asking for information and trying to receive information, especially if it's sensitive information. We still live in America. We have our Second Amendment. And the journalist, if you're an investigator, you have still the right to protect your source, where you're receiving the information from.
Correct.
So, you know, so there is that protection that we still have.
Yeah, and I've been through that many times. I mean, I created the American Press Association way back in the 80s. And part of that was just so I had that level of protection, because the things I was doing was a little bit out of the norm. But to allow myself to go in and do things, I used myself being an investigative journalist and to cover to do whatever it is I needed to do. And I still do that to this very day. So it's a good point
before we even got into YouTube, we were a photojournalist, and we're breaking world news constantly every day. Well, every week. It was, you know, across the UK, Australia, the US, everywhere was picking up on our stories. And again, we had to protect our sources, because some of the information we were receiving, we wouldn't receive that information again if we blew the whistle on who the person was that was giving us this information. So
and if you ever do that one time, you're done. It's just like, you can't, you have to be able to, or be willing to go to jail and be put under contempt of court to go ahead and do that. But luckily, you know, you've done it, I've done it, I know some others who have done it. I've been lucky, and I've never had to face that situation. I have had a contempt of court charge put against me, but it was immediately dropped the next day as soon as I put a whole bunch of stuff out that didn't like it. But yeah, I get it. And it's important that rule is in place.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool. It's one of our great amendments that we have that protects journalists.
The only job that's mentioned in the Constitution is basically press. Something else mentioned is good. Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Remember, lurking is good.
I seriously question an increase in the Pentagon budget in the face of the department's recent Inspector General's report. How can we seriously consider a $50 billion increase in the defense budget when DOD's own auditors say the department cannot account for $2.3 trillion in transactions in 1 year alone?
It is, I was going to say terrifying. It is such a monumental task. I doubt, to be honest, that people inside the department are going to be capable of sorting this out. I have a feeling it's going to take some folks from outside to come in and look at this.
A couple of years ago, Professor Mark Skidmore heard Catherine Austin Fitz, former Assistant Secretary in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, say that the Department of Defense Inspector General had found $6.5 trillion worth of unaccounted for spending in 2015. And Skidmore, being an economics professor, thought she means $6.5 billion, not trillion, because trillion would mean the Pentagon misplaced more money than the gross domestic product of the whole of the United Kingdom. But still, $6.5 billion of unaccounted for money is insane. It's crazy, all right? It's a crazy number. So he went and he looked into the Inspector General's report, and he found something interesting. It was trillion! It was fucking trillion! It was $6.5 trillion in 2015 of unaccounted for spending. Trillion with a T. T isn't totally insane, all right?
You're at Michigan State University.
Yes.
Just a little background for you. You are an expert in public finance.
We're trying to get
you have done a deep dive on what Catherine Austin Fitts.
Trying to get like Catherine Austin Fitts on or this professor for a talk too, man, because this is like, I really think that you can't spend that kind of money unless you have a secret space program that's bigger than the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was only like, 28 billion or something in today's money.
Yeah, and the Cold War was over, so you had a lot more work that needed to be done, so they just kept going.
Oh yeah, this is like $65,000 for every person in America, and Alaska, and Hawaii, and Puerto Rico.
SCI, sensitive compartmentalized information, and there's a lot of money in that, I would imagine, and they're having fun with it.
The secrecy, you can tell Donald Rumsfeld knows way more about it than he lets on, and it's just like.
And just to help anyone that's doing searches, if you're searching for specific security, there is no security clearance above top secret. So anyone that goes that route, just so you know, it doesn't exist. In reality, it doesn't. But what does exist is certain classifications of the top secret security clearance, which would include Umbra, which is your main classification where all your black budget projects go into. Anything involving UFO would be under Umbra. And also, if you look at anything involving the president, anything that gets close to the president is considered what's called Yankee White. So you have to have that type of security clearance to even work with the president or work at the White House and things like that. So it's just, if anyone has any questions about that stuff, I'll be more than happy to help you that way.
Yeah, man. Too many people listen to Bob Lazar. I come to this show, we turn them around and we try to show them like the legit side of this.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
There's a lot of the stuff they don't need classification for because they can just hide it in plain sight because it's really, it takes such a technical knowledge and learning. It's like education. It's basically like library books, and they're just sitting there and no one ever reads them,
Right.
So they don't have to protect
Or
them. They don't have to do anything.
Do it through contractors, and that doesn't. So they have like 2 or 3 different levels of contractors. Plus, like you said, doing it in plain sight. Look at DARPA. A lot of the things that that are done in DARPA's open projects, and you can join it.
And you can find all the research on archive.org and everywhere else for all those projects too, and they're all there if you do the research. But what it's about is it's about the knowledge and the inside intelligence and knowing which names to look up. Which man, I'm on that.
Well, they continue to change the project names as well. So
but you can't change the names of the scientists because they carry this. At the end of the day, the scientists are the ones who really carry the innate knowledge and the core knowledge of these subjects. So if you study the subject matter and you really get into the physics like we do, man, you make some killer connections just going through bibliographies, because there's your secret space programs right there. You just like, well, who's this guy? This guy was working on this and that one classified. Well, who is he working on it with? And then you have a list of names that you can contact, and
I can tell you it's a lot harder to run a secret space program because almost many of the objects that are being tracked, people think it takes a government to actually track some of these objects. We've had people tracking KH-11 satellites, for years and years and years, and they can tell when there's a course correction or the satellite is even turned at an angle to give you an oblique angle of a far off target, and they can tell where it's aiming. I mean, that's and then we're talking about just normal everyday citizens are able to do this. So
I'm glad you mentioned that. There was a part from the that interview that Blake did with Stephen Greer where he talked a little bit about this, and I wanted to harp on that and address it real quick. What was that? It was the censored data, and that was like the part of it was the classified hearings that took place afterward.
Right.
But there was something else that he had said. Sorry, it sparked my memory, and now I'm like, it's slipping.
I'll come back to you. You're getting old.
What were you saying right before that? Like about
what was I saying, or what was Blake saying?
No, you saying, Mike.
What you're saying.
What I was saying was, I was talking about the different classifications inside of, there is nothing above top secret. So anytime someone mentions above top secret, they're either using it as some sort of just a term so people get an idea of what they're talking about. It's very ultra secretive, or they don't actually know that top secret is as high as it goes. There's just different classifications like SEIs. And,
right, and each one of these is like a separate...
sensitive, compartmental information.
Right, and NSA, PSI, which is extremely or extraordinarily sensitive information.
So,
go ahead.
So it's a little higher than above top secret. Like if you have a classification of above top secret, you're still not sometimes able to get into the...
So the majority of that now works through. There's no classification on it, right? It's not even top secret. It's not even in the classification table because it's moved to these quasi-governmental organizations or these private corporations, which have a lot of the powers of government, a lot of the reaches and tentacles of government power, but are again protected under nonprofit status, educational institutional status, and other things of that nature. Some of them maybe even religious institutions might be.
When I asked Avi Loeb from the Galileo Project about some of the secrecy, I think this guy's naive. He's obviously super intelligent about certain things, but I think he underestimates our government because he said that he doesn't believe our government could actually, they're incompetent of holding secrets. Look at how bad they manage the country. Much less keep a secret as sensitive as like hidden technology. Of course, they're able to hide things from us. I don't understand.
I mean, look at the F-117. I mean, they hid that that's a very good successful thing there. They hid that for years and years and years, even though there were some sightings here and there. But overall, that project was kept under wraps. It was originally brought on as Has Blue, and then went into the F-117, Nihon. But that whole project was very well kept under wraps. And there's quite a few. Last time I was at Skunk Works, which the video is actually on my channel. When you go into certain areas of certain buildings, then the security is getting tighter and tighter and tighter as you start seeing different people block your path or block your way into access areas. But a lot of that at Skunk Works alone, which is at Plant 42, that whole area is real interesting to watch how the security operates. You have the outside security, inside security, and then you have your military security. But still, you're at Palmdale Airport. It's a normal civilian airport. A lot of people don't realize that your Skunk Works is sitting at a civilian airport to some degree, but then you've got that whole secret side of the base that is that is making a lot of top secret stuff, and it gets pretty interesting. But go ahead, Jeremy.
Again, there's lots of top secret stuff that's going on, but what do we focus on specifically to bring up at these hearings that is not going to violate too much of our national security?
But you have, anytime you do that, you've got to bring it up in such a way that you build into it. And sometimes you may allow a senator or a congressman to actually spill the beans somewhat. And they'll say, "Are you talking about blah blah blah?" Or you're trying to get them to say something first. I would highly suggest that anyone that brings up anything to any of the hearings to have a congressman that is on your side that's on that committee. Down here in Florida, you got Marco Rubio, and other parts of the country, you've got other senators that are in that way. So you definitely want to be in good with that. If you're not, then you're probably not even going to get 10 seconds on the floor.
Hey, and I can't fix the echo. That's just Mike's mic, if you will. Sorry, but Mike, I'm gonna give Blake the floor for a second. What did you guys talk beyond this interview that you did with Stephen, or did you guys just kind of like did he just leave it off as that? Or I know that he did a big part in the documentary you did with him. But if I were to reach out with some of these, some documentation for him to add to that archive, and we could maybe break it down in some specific folders of there's a lot of programs, a lot of projects, and then we'd have to sift again and scrubbing it.
We actually, we have some documents that we received from the DIA in Los Alamos that we forwarded over to Greer. Certain things, the subterranean, the DI documents looking into warp drive, time, wormholes, and all this crazy stuff that they're seeming to look into very in-depthly into it. But then for some reason, they said, well, they didn't proceed any further. The Los Alamos subterranean documents that we released, we forward that over. Because I like
that was Eric Davis, who also is a prominent figure in this Wilson leaks, which was brought up in the hearing already. So I think that it's only fair that Eric Davis should testify, and I would rather see Eric Davis testify than I think Lou Elizondo.
Yeah,
I think
why not get Greer in there as well? I'm sure he'd shake things up. But also, what I told Greer in regards to the subterranean, they had these schematics and the designs of this supposed that would bore through Earth with like a tip, with a nuclear tip. And I'm telling Dr. Greer, like, these are schematics. They're visually pretty impressive. I think the people over there in Washington would immediately understand that they're looking at something versus reading something. At least some of these politicians, they're not very bright, but they could look at pictures and maybe get an inkling of, wow, there is something going on here. What happened with these projects? And we covered in the documentary Above Top Secret and some of the cover-ups. Again, it's interesting that you bring up the water hydrogen car and some of the
the energy technologies,
the nefarious, like the cover-ups. We really dive deep into the technology of suppression and also what's the benefit behind the suppression. And it's Above Top Secret. It's kind of mind-blowing for a lot of people that aren't really asking these kind of questions about ufology. They think it's all about just these videos that pop up or these military videos or even some of the public's videos. It's a lot more than just UFOs. Is it ET or is it not? There's like, it could change the world overnight, as Greer says, and a paradigm shift. I think we're going to be going over some of that in our episode tonight. I think it's going to be coming up in the top of the hour, about 27 minutes from now. We're going to get into it with Jeremy in regards to the Battelle cover-up, if there is technology that was recovered from Roswell. And we're going to go over some possible cover-up by NASA, because we're trying to track down some video from an ISS live feed, and we're having a really hard time. So we're going to be talking about hopefully getting the public. We're trying to get the public to really help us out to get the archive. I've done some research myself trying to obtain this, and usually I can, but right now I'm kind of hitting a roadblock here.
Yeah, I think the videos is important too, because that's also it's more entertaining for the majority of people who don't have like the patience or the head for all the technical stuff. Because not everyone.
And that's what these Congress guys need to see, right? They need that visual evidence, because they're not too bright. They're not physicists. They're not scientists, but they have eyes. And we know that apparently, I don't think these Congress guys are getting the.
But a lot of them are very good financially, so they understand the money side of this. So I think hitting them with the technologies and the amount of money that's wrapped up in these technologies, I think, is a key. Convincing factor. When you start talking about those trillions, the T, back to that's a good thing to mention. It says, well, there's all this secret technology flying around out there that we don't know what it is, and there's all this money missing. what is it? And that's what we start with. I start with all these secret programs because I have documentation for that. I have scientific, irrefutable evidence for all that stuff, and it starts a whole conversation that they're forced to then have, where they're now talking about these things. So that's a good angle, yeah. But again, it exposes some secrets, so it's a little dangerous too, because it's like, how much of this secret technology do I want to talk about that without really, that really gets us to the core issue here. And the core issue here is those UFO metals, man. Let's be serious. If there's UFO recoveries and crash recoveries, and they got metals out there, that is the core.
That's the Holy Grail.
That's the Holy Grail, and those are the crown jewels. We got to keep it focused on that and go after it. And we can have all the videos we want, and all that. I put a poll online on Twitter, and I said, what would be the most irrefutable piece of scientific evidence that we could present, at a congressional hearing to make them be like, yeah, holy shit. And I asked, would it be low def blurry videos, high def, videos with thermal imaging, or would it be actual UFO metals and materials? And
what about the bodies?
Oh, the bodies, yeah.
Come on, man. That's the Holy Grail, guys. Come on.
That's beyond the metal. You're right. I think the bodies would be a step beyond, and everyone wants the bodies.
We'll take the metals as well.
Hey, Blake, just real quick, if you need help getting any footage out of NASA or whatever, I've got some ways to get around some of their little blocks they have. Just shoot me what it is you're looking for, and I'll try to get it for you as well.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. If you could tune in again, we're going to go live with Jeremy at Alien Sciences, and we're going to be talking about some things. But if you can watch tonight's episode, 5x5 News, I think it is. We're going to be giving the time state stamp, the time code, the dates and time to this ISS sighting, and I'm trying to go back in the archive and find it. And if you could help out, and we want to get and ascertain this original video feed.
Yeah, no problem.
Then we might have something here. And also, it's interesting that apparently NASA is jumping into the UFO hunt, and we have hundreds of videos that NASA, if they really want to kind of look at some things. And NASA pretending that they're just now joining the UFO hunt is so cute. It's so
it's precious. It really is.
It's darling. These guys are
really, you're just joining now. You didn't hire Dr. Paul Hill to study these things for over a decade, and the only reason we know about it is because his daughter published his notebook. No, that didn't happen. And
they have an office in Houston that actually, if you open the door, it's like the wallpaper is aluminum foil, the desk is gunmetal foil or whatever. So the whole thing was done as a practical joke like 20 years ago for somebody that was there working and doing some UFO research. But when he left, he quit in protest, and they left the office exactly as it is. So it's kind of a secret over there, but it's funny when you see the whole thing, all aluminum foil. They've always had somebody somewhere working in a molder type office doing something.
Well, I mean, let's go back in history to Blue Book and all this stuff that was happening. The first director of the CIA, Roscoe Hillenkoetter, stated on record that that the CIA takes this much more seriously than they say, that they lead the public, and that they lead the public to believe that it's all nonsense. But they really take it super seriously behind the scenes. That was the first director of the CIA. Then you have guys like Forrestal, the first Secretary of Defense. When they first created that whole they redid the Defense Department after World War II and everything. The first Secretary of Defense, Forrestal, he said he was going to quit in protest for some reason, and I think it was over the UFO stuff because he wanted to release it. That's the alleged rumor, and that they fired him and put him in a mental hospital instead, and that he wound up killing himself by jumping out of like a window and stuff. And So there's all this weird history of things like that. He was allegedly one of the original members of the MJ12, this committee that they had hired to keep this cover up under a small group of people, 12 people who were outside of the government. None of these people actually, I don't think, work for the government. They were all like university professors and CIA people or college professors and stuff of some regard. Balloon scientists and some of these other people that were part of this group. And their goal was to publicly discredit the UFOs and, engaging in this secret college kind of research behind the scenes. And, we're going to talk about all that stuff, Brett, and I want to bring it all up, and
we'll see you. We'll see you in just a bit. We got to get ready for the show.
Yeah, you guys go get ready, and I can't wait to jump over there, and I'll
and then bring your camera a little closer for our show. If you could just, we want to see you, man. We want to see you.
Drop a little light in there.
And drop some light in there. Get some color. There you go. If we want to see you, man.
Look official, man. Get him on. I'll send you a ring light. How's that?
I had a light.
Yeah. All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us on, Jeremy. You guys have a good night. And
too.
We'll see you.
Thanks. We'll see you in a second there.
Yep. Okay, great. We'll see you.
Awesome.
Later.
So, the science, I think, is the key. That's going to be over on third phase of the moon, guys. If you want to jump over there, these guys reach a ton of people, and they're like a lot of these big channels now. They're starting to come around to this whole secret, black technologies part of the UFO file, and just realizing how much evidence and information there really is out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great that we've spent all this time compiling it all and becoming so fluent with it and getting so much. We dig so deep into it that we've got so much evidence now. It's just like it's overflowing with facts, and that's exactly what we need for these congressional hearings. So it's important to team up with these channels so that we can have the right people having the right conversations with it's not just about having this conversation. It's about what kind of conversations we're having about it, and what kind of evidence we're looking at, and what
like I alluded to earlier, just make sure you have someone in Congress or Senate or whichever committee you're trying to run the thing through that is already aware of what you're doing. I mean, think about all the foot traffic or the footwork that Corbell did, when he was pushing stuff around. So I mean, it's important.
Yeah, it's good to get attention. It's awesome when you get attention, man. But if you get the megaphone, man, if you don't got something good to say, pass the mic, and that's exactly what it's time for these people to do.
Exactly.
They have nothing. They've shown nothing. We have so much. So I just found this today. I went digging this morning. Someone asked about it because it was linked to, and then they couldn't find the source from the Wikipedia article, but I found it. Here's the official document. It's here's the official agreement number at the top there for anyone who wants to screenshot that and go look it up. 448.
Just so you know, real quick, I'm a Wikipedia editor. So if you need me to go back into Wikipedia, whenever they change a page, I have access to all of the changes that are made. So if something is there and it's not there now,
yeah, they took the link down, so I had to go back and get it from archive.org. It's kind of like it's on the Ning Lee page right here. At the bottom, it's link number 8 on the Ning Lee page, but I had to go back on archive.org and find it. On the way,
I'll go in there and see if there's any history of that might help you out.
Nah, the Wayback Machine is where I found. I don't know if you could find where it is now. They might have it published somewhere else now. They moved it to, but yeah, I'm not gonna go and dig that up right now. If you want them, you're more than welcome.
No, they just have anytime something's changed on a page, it shows when it was changed, who changed it, what happened, all that stuff. So if you have any situation like that you need help with, no problem. I'll hook you up.
Yeah, she was then a research physicist at University of Alabama in Huntsville. It's like where again, it's always a nearby college where they recruit a lot of the brains out of to do a lot of, and that's how the program. That's how the programs start, and they don't move beyond the few scientists who work on it, and it just becomes this. They go and tell them, listen, you can't talk to your friends about this. All the documents need to be locked up in this secure folder at work, and it needs to be, and and you can't take this stuff home from work with you. And if you do, there's problems, just like Isaac Kemp found out when he was taking documents home. And that's exactly how they run these types of operations. And it's not. It is occasionally, these corporations where but how they recruit is differently. It's like a personal basis. They go looking for you, and you get an offer you can't refuse.
Yep, that's exactly what happens. I'll be in Huntsville in about 2.5 weeks or so. So if there's anything you need to take a look at while I'm there, I'll try to see what I can. If there's any particular individual you can talk to, I'll try to do what I can.
So they got granted on 25th of April 2001, and then about 15 months later or 16 months later, their contract was completed with $500,000. So man, $500,000, I could,
you do a lot.
Could do a lot with that. And apparently, all they did was build this large diameter superconductor disk. And they didn't even get to run any experiments with it because there's no experiments or no data published. And I heard that NASA,
And you can't get access to that. I mean, one of the things I think would be important is anytime a project like that ends, that the materials or the notes or something has to go forward. Where did that stuff go? I mean, that's super important. I mean, it's our taxpayer dollars too, when you think about it.
Yeah, this is the disk right here. Look at the size of that. I mean, in terms of superconductor disks, it was huge. But took a lot to build that, and they had to use, again...
Is that a YCBO or whatever?
Yeah, so this looks like a piece of acrylic plate, maybe 16 or 18 inches on a side. And then on top of that, I think this is aluminum. It's a substrate dish that they use to form the crystal on, because it tends to crack unless they form it to a substrate. But then there's an adherence layer, which is part of the proprietary process that I've learned about for actually how to build the superconductors. But it's a ceramic. It's like a ceramic powder that it comes in, and they have to cast it like a cement, like a ceramic. Like ceramic. It's
I think some of that is done in a vacuum atmosphere. Non-atmosphere, I guess, would be more appropriate. But yeah.
So this was probably the bell jar plate. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But it's because they might have done it under a vacuum inside of a bell jar.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
By the way, if anyone knows where we can get an 18-inch bell jar for pretty cheap, let me know. Keep your eyes out. I'm in the market.
Does it need to be glass or can it be metal?
I'd rather have glass because I want to film the whole thing. Be key.
If you just like I do at FSU, if you contact some of the universities that are near you, a lot of times they'll have stuff that they can donate, as long as it didn't come to them under some pretense that the materials need to go back or be plentiful or whatever. They have a lot of stuff that they can allow you to either borrow or use. Or you can go there and use your facility. So you would be amazed at how much you can get done if you just stay in contact with someone at one of the facilities you want to work with.
Oh, by the way, one more thing I feel like I should mention before we wrap up, because I probably won't mention this on the other show, but there's an internship, Material Science and Engineering Co-op of the fall of 2022 in Columbus, Ohio, on site. Only 6 people have applied so far. We need some inside people in Battelle. So any students out there that are watching, make sure you take down any posts that you might have made after watching some of my videos, and then go apply.
Good point.
And then, you can contact me in a couple months if they don't get you under an NDA, and try to get some information or some access.
One more thing
apply
before
right
you
on
close down.
LinkedIn.
Have you looked at the idea of why do they need all that money? if their black budget projects really came up with something like matter creation or things like that, they wouldn't need the money. I don't think they've gotten very far in their technology. Otherwise, they'd be able to go up and grab those
I know,
gold
like, how did
meteorites.
Russia and China beat us to, like, in hypersonic race? Because the hypersonics, they have demonstrable like technology before we had it. So it's so weird. It's like,
Has been talking about for years about all this missing money, all these missing transactions, unauthorized transactions, and you were out to prove her wrong. And you used government documents, government accessible links on the internet, all the stuff that anybody could do to find out a big wad of transactions and monies that really is unauthorized. 21 trillion.
In short, I was last June, I was listening to an interview with Catherine, and she referred to a report that had come out in 2016 by the Office of the Inspector General. She had referred to a report that indicated in fiscal year 2015 that the Army, which has about $122 billion budget, had $6.5 trillion in adjustments. And I'm familiar with state and local budgets. I've taught budgeting processes to new county commissioners. And I know that things happen within government that, you know, sometimes it's not always up and up, or sometimes you have an adjustment just because you don't have adequate transactions. So the auditor, you know, receipts, etc. And so the auditor will just say, you know what, this is an unsupported adjustment. We have to account for this. And usually it's just a small portion of authorized spending, you know, maybe 1% at most. So for the Army, 1% would be about $1.2 billion of transactions that you just can't account for. You don't have adequate documentation. We spent this summer sifting through thousands of reports, trying to identify the reports that indicate an unsupported journal voucher adjustment amount.
I doubt, to be honest, that people inside the department are going to be capable of sorting this out. I have a feeling it's going to take some folks from outside to come in and look at this and put in place a process that over a period, and I regret to say, but I've seen how long things take. I think it's going to take a period of years to sort it out, and I think it'll probably take the cooperation of the Congress to.
Well, yeah. Well, it's long overdue, in case you haven't noticed. What do we got going on over there, Jeremiah? Oh, yeah, baby. Fly it. That's a pretty cool coil shape.
It's really surprisingly stable, too.
I really want one of those.
I mean, how much more stuff can I probably stick
Make yourself a hoverboard.
Hoverboard.
They actually made one for a commercial. I think it was.
Wasn't it Lexus that funded that? It was
Lexus, Lexus, yeah, sure was, and they did it.
I got the strings pretty tight. Otherwise, I think it's wildly unstable.
Hell yeah. Now, is it on a certain frequency, or is that just DC? Or
Yeah, it's modulated. You can actually see the, well, I guess it was flashing a little too quickly, yeah. If I turn it just right, you'll see it going back and forth between constant current and constant voltage mode.
Now, if you want, you can fund every project you want to do in the future by allowing that to be made in China for the low cost of $19.95.
Well, when I ran a When I ran a laser manufacturing business, a tiny one out of an apartment, actually, because laser pointers are not large, but I was making some of the world's first UV laser pointers in competition with this other fellow on eBay at the time, Hercule Science or something like that. He was drilling out Dorsey flashlights and sticking Nietzsche 405 nanometer diodes in those cases using the flashlight drivers. And of course, I was actually building professional laser pens only about 20 miles away from where this guy was located, ironically enough. So yeah, I was building those things, making a pretty good profit, and then it wasn't but a year later that design looking exactly like the one that I was selling and manufacturing there came out. And of course, they were selling it for pennies on the dollar, which just, to me, I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm done with lasers.
Yeah, you got to stay way ahead of the guys over there because, I mean, I've been to China like 30 times. I've had thousands of products made over there, and just going back and forth, I just knew every time I had a new product that it was going to be knocked off. I even knocked off my own product before my original product came out. The Microtex Tachyon Butterfly Knife was actually my design. And when I knew that design was coming out, I went ahead and knocked it off in China.
So, what kind of coil structure is that, and how does this work? Why is it floating? I mean,
It's not my design. Okay, so first off, it's not my design.
Is it magnetic repulsion off the table, or is it?
Exactly. It's repulsion off the table, so it's surface sensitive. It's a combination of a very high voltage impulse discharge and a twisted magnetic field.
What's the table made out of?
The table is made of plywood. I spray painted it flat black. I used to use this table for DJing, but it makes a fantastic lab bench. Because, you know, I can, if I screw it up, it's just plywood, so I can just spray paint it over, like take a Q-tip and, you know, clean it up, whatever. But, yeah, and it's non-conductive. It's actually, I dried this wood out in the heat of the sun for several days before I used it for this application and coated it just to make sure that it was going to be completely dry. Because even while I was DJing, I thought to myself, well, you know, it's probably going to absorb moisture over the years, and if I ever want to use it for high-voltage experiments, I'll probably want to make sure it's dry. And anyways, so it's fairly dry. I can set terminals directly on the surface here and be just fine. Have them mark about 4.
Have you tested the electrical impedance?
What happens if you put paper clips under it?
Impedance meter out.
So you have an oscilloscope there on the right, and then this is your voltage
attenuator.
Voltage and current, right? So we were seeing a little pulse waveform. You'll see it chirping. I have it set to a sweep right now, just to kind of get a multiple frequency range, but let's see if I can turn up the waveform intensity. There we go. So you can see the sweep.
Yeah. You have a sine and
square wave, actually.
Square wave.
Is this one where the rise time matters or no?
Yeah, hell yeah, it matters. It matters a lot. It matters like the entirety of the operation of the system.
Yeah, so you got probably another thing connected in there that helps with that, right?
Yeah. David Wilcox is taking notes in the background right now.
I'm taking notes. How do you wind the coil?
It's a wood tip.
How'd you wind that coil? So it looks like there's like looks like E8 with a bunch of like series of pins.
That designed this crazy coil, and a buddy of mine suggested that I build this coil specifically to learn part of the art, so I would understand the geometric structure of how to create a parallel line inductor in this particular way. And so I took him up on the challenge and built this coil. I had to, you know, ask for help several times because it's a ridiculously complicated thing. I'm not going to rip it off the threads right now to
parallel
but
line
yeah,
inductor.
It's a ridiculously complicated coil. It took me 4 unwinds. Finally got it on the 5th try. I had to do a full unwind the first time, which is why I call this my second coil. But it's still the same coil. It's the first coil that I've actually gotten to work correctly, where what it does is it focuses all the magnetic fields from the outside inwards in steps, like staircases, and focuses them in the center here so that I get a significant vortex coming out of the system.
Which makes it quite a bit different than your standard electromagnet, which is probably what a lot of people are thinking it is.
Yeah, completely different. I mean, a lot of different ways to wind electromagnets, and just as some examples of them, you know, we have a solenoid electromagnet where the windings are basically around a cylinder and just trace up and down all the way until they reach the inside of the outside. This is what you'd find inside of a high voltage transformer classically. Then we have a toroidal transformer. This one has no core, so this is designed for a very fast impulse. I use this in some experiments replicated from Bob Grenier, and I was using this on a xenon flash tube for that Project Xeno. And anyways, we have lots of different coil varieties, but this particular one is different because it's not actually a coil. It's actually a series of straight line wires or line inductors, And so if we take a look at, the right hand wheel, we have a wire basically just pointing straight. If we have current flowing through it in one direction, we're going to have a wrapping magnetic field. So basically you have a wire and you have a field that's rotating around it. So if you had any particle that, say, accelerated towards this wire or was just moving in any direction, and you had a current flowing through this wire, then you would have a response to that particle as a result, where if it was, say, negatively charged, it'd wrap around like this, or if it was positively charged, it'd wrap around like this. But if it was just sitting here, it wouldn't move. But if you tried to move it this way, it wouldn't just go this way, it'd go this way. It tried to do that twist because it wants to follow the current flow at the tangent. And that's a funny little interaction between the way electrons flow through a wire and the position of the protons in each of those nuclei. When they're ionized like that and they're missing electrons, or they're giving off free valence electrons and transmitting the current down the wire, they act strangely, and you sort of have this mirror effect where it's almost as if you had your hand like this and you shined a flashlight through or between your fingers. The direction that you move the flashlight would create a shadow on the wall that moved the opposite direction. And so that's basically the same kind of effect that we're seeing here. You have a direction of a torque, but if you have an ion that tries to move tangential to it, it experiences a force 90 degrees to both. And it's a funny little thing.
So if you wrap that in like an orthocyclic manner with like a tickler on one end, you can control the direction at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, you could just reverse the wiring too if you wanted to. You could just flip the wires. It's not the ideal system. There's a much better coil design that will really focus what I'm trying to do with this thing and give me a significantly better coupling coefficient. I wouldn't call it gravity. Anyways, I don't know what the hell it is, or how safe it is to be around. But anyways, still working it out. There's a lot to do yet, and this is just something brand new. That's I've never tried to build a coil like this. I mean, it's an oddball thing. It was a major pain in the butt, and would I approach it that way in the future? I'm not sure. Probably not. I probably do something quite a bit different. Maybe
Is that I'm assuming that's copper wire. Is that coated copper?
Copper magnet wire. I think looking at it, I'm just taking a guess here. I'm going to say that's probably 26. I pulled it off of a relay, so I have no idea what the actual gauge. I didn't bother to check it, but I think it's about 26 gauge.
Looks cool.
Dan's on the phone with me right now, guys. Dan, just
transition on over and make sure to drop the link to the other channel in your stream.
You want to jump in real quick? I'll let you back on real quick before I wrap it up. If you want to try one more time. Dan Foster's on the phone right now. I'm trying to get him to come back on and just wrap it up with. We're gonna try out that coil, but apparently the other coil, I wish you would demonstrate that because apparently that floats too, right?
That's by a totally different mechanism, though, and that one, I don't want to say for sure that it is gravity, but it's like a gravity shield. I would say it's probably more related to Ron Pita. You have two fields that are trying to go in opposite directions, very similar to this coil, but in his coil, I mean, they're basically canceling out almost 100%.
All right, man. Have a good night. Be safe. All right, man. Best.
The reason I demoed the coil right now is because I blew the circuit that was supposed to drive it, so I can build a brand new amplifier that specifically is designed for that fast impulse speed to drive it.
All right, guys. Well, I'm this is great, man. I'm so psyched that this hearings happened and all this stuff is unfolding. We just got to get the right information in the right hands and get it on a bigger microphone and compete with these guys like Corbell that are just polluting the airwaves with
garbage.
Yeah, absolute flotsam and jetsam.
All right, man. Appreciate you having me on, dude. I'm gonna head out, and I know you got the other show you got to jump on there too. Thanks everybody for having me in, and I appreciate it. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Mike Turber of 5x5 News. Guys, go check out that guy's channel.
I will say one last thing. This is not mine, so I cannot answer questions on it. But if I can study it and learn how to basically utilize the same principle, then that can be ours. So this I can't talk about, but I'm working on right now. That's in conjunction with this, I will be able to talk about.
Sweet. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, man. That's always cool to see some experiments with something cool going on. More than just gyroscopes flinging around the air. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, guys. Good night.
Have a good night. All right, guys. Have a good night, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. We're gonna try and reach out to get some. We're gonna get Corbell out of the equation and get some better information in the hands of our senators and congressmen. All right, guys. Thank you all for watching. Keep up the good fight.